Bob Ferguson, welcome to Profoundly Impactful. I was taking a minute prior to you sitting down before we got mic'd up, and I was thinking how incredibly impactful this is for me in my life, having this opportunity to sit here and hear your story. I've looked up to you for many, many years, and from afar, and you are a lot of your behaviors and the person characteristics, the person that you are today is what I aspire to be. So I wanted to get the opportunity to sit down and kind of hear your story and kind of get the conversation started a little bit. And with that being said, we can take it personal, recovery, professionally, but to the best of your memory, what was that most profoundly impactful moment that happened in your life that kind of triggered the snowball effect to where we are here in a hotel room right now talking?
Well, Wesley, thank you. I appreciate it. And well, I guess for me, there was a couple of moments. I remember clearly different times where one moment for me where I had some real clarity. I can remember it to this day about that I was different and not necessarily in a way I wanted to be different. And I guess you could say that was a time where I realized I was really powerless over alcohol. We were on a camping trip in college. There was just a bunch of us doing what college kids do. And it was a canoe trip, and there were 4 of us in 2 canoes, and our canoe went over, and with it a case of beer went to the bottom of the river. And so we regrouped, pulled the canoe over, and I was ready to go back. It was an overnight trip, and I just thought, okay, well, we've got to get some more beer.
Sure.
And the other 3 guys were like, no, we don't. And we all like to drink beer, but it was in that moment that I didn't quite like the way those guys were looking at me. Like it was strange that I would kill a camping trip or a canoe trip. I didn't want to go overnight without beer, and it made me realize that while they were there together with other people and there was some beer in the boat, I was with some beer and there were people in the boat. And it was one of those moments where I thought, gosh, I must be in a different place than these other folks, and I wouldn't know it for many years, but it was at that moment I began to notice more and more things where I was really powerless over the chemicals that I was using. And I used to drink and I used to use drugs to make my world bigger, expand, right? I wanted to expand my universe. I wanted to have powerful and intimate personal connections with people. And it gave me that until it worked until it didn't, and then I started to make my world smaller and smaller. And I guess the other time that I think about, that's step 1 of the 12 steps tells us that we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Well, I think that's when I started to think and realize I was maybe powerless over alcohol.
Right.
But fast forward, I go through all these different treatment experiences, and I'm in my 4th rehab, and we're about a month and a half into it. And we're having one of those groups. And the group that I was in had a counselor who said, okay, there seem to be some issues going on in the house, and every guy was asked, how they experienced hanging out with me, and every one of them had something to say that wasn't that great. And it was aloof, not trustworthy, don't feel safe around you. And I kept trying to interrupt or kept trying to get my... And I was asked to just listen. And finally I got a chance for what I thought was, my turn, my side of the story. And I said, that's so funny because I've been out on a walk with you and we work together and we've had a chance to talk, but in the group, you all want to look good and kind of tear me down. And it was, and I just kind of, I had this rebuttal that left the room quiet and nobody said anything for a long time. And my counselor, his name was Don, said, Bobby, the fact that there's 22 people in this room and none of them feels comfortable enough with you to let you know what's going on in their relationship with you, that may not be your fault, but that's your problem. And you're going to live with that the rest of your life if you don't figure it out right here and right now.
Yeah.
And I will say that was the most profound and impactful moment that I've had in my life, because there was no drugs or alcohol anywhere around, just Bob.
Yeah.
And I had managed to somehow, with this need to look good and be right all the time, push people away. And I wanted them so close, and I pushed them so far away. And all of a sudden, the dam kind of broke, and I became just a little more interested in other people's opinions, because I felt so broken, so lonely, and there was nothing to blame but how I showed up in the world. So it was 4 treatments in that I realized it. I thought it was just alcohol and drugs, but it was really about me. And I started to listen and get interested in other people's suggestions about my life that day. And now I still take it back, and I still get into trouble, and I still trespass in my relationships, but I remember that whenever I need to.
Yeah.
That left to my own devices,
Yeah.
I'll push away the people that I want the most,
Yeah.
closest to me. And so I've used that moment a lot in my when I get myself into some trouble.
Sure.
Yeah, it helps me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been really cool watching these episodes unfold, and the most common denominator that I've found is when people start talking about their most profound moment in their life, it's not, I hit rock bottom. It's, I had this higher power experience. I was opened up, cracked open almost, you know, and of a sense of being completely vulnerable. And it's so important for us to check ourselves on that, because we can so quickly get caught up in our day-to-day lives and put on this suit, this armor, and kind of protect ourselves from whatever we think we're in danger from. And when ultimately we're the safest when we're the most vulnerable around each other, and that's when we can truly help each other. And I see that in you, and it radiates from you every time I shake your hand. And so I know you've been sober for over 20 years, and a lot of the people watching are, probably wondering how to get into this industry, or maybe not even into the industry, but how do I achieve over 20 years? We were talking earlier, and you said you've been sober now for longer than you were using, and that's such a powerful thing. What a cool thing to say, you know, from somebody that in my position that looks up to that and strives to achieve that one day. I have a lot of respect for that. And so if you had any bit of advice for the viewers of how to incorporate little pieces into their life, or things that they could start to pick up that would help them hopefully either get in the field or achieve a fulfilled life.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's really cool. I mean, I was 30, I guess 29, 30 when I got sober, which was as soon as I could do it. I wasn't ready or able to do it, but I know so many young adults now that get sober in their teens and early 20s, and I'm so inspired by that.
Yeah.
Because you have this boundless energy and these great tools.
Yeah.
You know, to have an old soul that's been to the dark side, and yet coming into the light with all this promise and future potential is such a cool thing to watch. And for me, selfishly, my career has been about just this privilege of grace of being around a guy when the lights go on.
Yeah.
So it's purely selfish, but if I get to be there when somebody has the kind of moment that I had when I realized, you know, it wasn't my fault, but it was my problem, and then I became interested in watching that happen with other guys. And I guess the best thing I can say for those who are passionate about their recovery and interested in getting into the field is I always start with the simplest things. Like, that's my advice, and is like, try to hold space for another human being or a group of people in some authentic way, and tie it to your own narrative. Like, that's what sponsorship's about. But it's also I mean, with Jaywalker Lodge, it's for guys who have a problem doing well in treatment and badly afterwards, right? So there I was a jaywalker, and so my business plan was really just pulled from my own narrative. Like, where did I struggle the most? And that's the kind of program that we got involved with. And I also think it's really important. Sober living is always a good way to start. Like, live with guys, be around guys, and you don't need clinical expertise. You just need to be in a group of like-minded people with some common call to purpose, hanging out together, you know, where it's safe. And then that space, if you pay attention to the people who show up in some simple sober living environment, they'll teach you everything you need to know. And they'll take you to the next level clinically. They'll take you to the higher level because there'll be unmet needs. But I always say, you know, just go in with a bunch of buddies and rent your space out and show up and see, pay attention, because those are your teachers, and they're gonna take the whole thing, you know. Thank goodness that whatever we built at Jaywalker isn't limited to what I had hoped for, because it's so much bigger.
It is.
And it's so much better.
Yeah.
Because of the people that hijacked it.
Yeah.
You know, these youngsters that came along,
Yeah.
and they've run with it, thank God. And so yeah, keep it simple, and you know, if you're lucky like me, you'll get to be around when the lights come on.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And your passion for your new project that has kind of really gained a lot of momentum. Do you want to talk about that for a quick second?
Sure. I mean, you know what happened with Jaywalker? We when I was 29 when I went to my last treatment, and I was the youngest guy on my unit.
Yeah.
Back 26 years ago. If you showed up at treatment today at age 29, you'd be one of the older guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the average age, and so what that means is what's needed after treatment for the person that's leaving this safe, wonderful, vulnerable experience and going back into the real world is different than what we needed, you know, 26 years ago.
Yeah.
And so what Alpha 180, we bought a fraternity house at the University of Texas. The Phi Delts sold us their house, and we have a reentry platform basically for newly sober students returning to college after treatment. Because for many of the guys that we see, the wheels really come off in college.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a college campus, it's weird. A college campus is a living laboratory for personal growth.
Yeah.
You're asking for help, you're identifying yourself, you fit into different communities and sub-communities. There's all these great things you get that are markers for growth and recovery. And yet it's the most abstinence, hostile, recovery, hostile environment anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's where the growth is, but it's where all the risk is.
Yeah.
So we're just jumping in to the war zone, the belly of the beast, in a frat house, and we're loud and proud, and we're sober, and we figure that like-minded students with some common call to purpose around being sober and going to school will just rage on campus, and they'll have a great time. So we're paying attention, and we're seeing where they'll take it. It just opened up last fall. We got 13 very strong, wonderful human beings, and hopefully someday, you know, I keep telling them, you could be a part of something that's on campuses. But this is the pioneer group. It's what you guys make it.
Yeah.
So we put a lot of the burden on them, let it be run by the students, and it's a great experiment. And so far, they've been awesome. Like they've really taken their recovery seriously. So I'm grateful to them for trying to optimize the upside of what their recovery can be together.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like being around it. It's just a fun.
I can imagine.
It's totally fun.
Yeah.
It's totally fun.
What a powerful thing. I can only imagine if those services were around when I was going through college.
Me too.
Or if I would have even been willing. And so who knows? It's really
right.
It's an incredible opportunity and an incredible dream that you have, and it's been fun to kind of watch that grow and develop and catch the speed that it has. And again, I want to thank you for taking this time to sit down with me and kind of open up a little bit, get a little weird. And
I really appreciate it.
Of course. It's been an honor, and thanks for hanging out with me.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Bob.